And we are live. It is like my favorite day of the week for multiple reasons. One, it's Monday. We're back into streaming after a little bit of a layoff. Two, we have Gallant Knight Games with us tonight. Alan himself. Alan, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
And you know, the third reason is I'm working on your map, and I seriously mean it when I say that this map is perhaps one of the funnest, if that's a word, maps I've ever freaking worked on. Because it's had me doing things that no other map has ever required of me. Can you tell me a little bit about this map here?
Yeah, so this map is for one of our upcoming games called Salt Wolves of the Whale Road. It's a RPG about Viking communities and families and homes. And so this map sort of represents what a English or continental monk would have drawn in the illuminated map style of the time based on Viking activity, Viking culture activities, right? Vikings weren't notoriously good mappers / any sort of mappers that we know of. And so to do a map, there's no quote Scandinavian or historical Viking Age style we can lean on from their culture. We kind of have to lean on other cultures' interpretations of that.
So now this is going into an RPG book, I assume.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's probably going to be the end papers and on every other page of the book based on how it looks right now. I'm just gonna every other page will be the map. Look at this map. Just see the map.
Well, I'm glad that you're liking which direction this is going in. We've got to add sea monsters and everything here, but it's good. It's good when a client is happy with what we're doing. And this is honestly everything I've done on this: the coloring, the styles, the border. Even the way I'm approaching the water, everything is different than anything I've ever done previously. So this has been a joy, and I think I'll never draw a border like this again. I'm letting you know that right now. This is just I probably put more work into the border than anything else.
It's gorgeous, and as a publisher, the thing you always want to hear from people you're working with is that they like what they're doing with you, because if they don't like it, not a good sign. So really glad to hear that you're liking it.
Now, is this going to be like a 5e sort of setting? Is it an adventure? What is this?
No, so it's actually I won't say a new rule set, but it's a heavily customized rule set inspired by Forged in the Dark and kind of powered by the Apocalypse.
Oh, nice.
And so I've kind of taken those and I've hacked them up into a bunch of pieces, and I've made a bunch of changes and really tweaked the game system. It actually involves drawing runes from a runestone bag as one of the mechanics when you do things. And the runes are tied to character creation. So the runes in your bag are informed by the characters you created. And they all kind of work together.
Nice. Now, do the runes that you have in your bag, when you say they're kind of tied with character creation, you do based on things that you do at character creation? Are you saying you get certain runes?
Yeah. So, one of the things in the game is you get gifts, right? And the gifts kind of represent the blessings fate has bestowed upon you, the weird that the Norns have given you, right?
Gotcha. Right.
And certain gifts are tied to certain things. So, for example, the rune associated with Thor is tied to the gift of Thor, which does what you would expect, right? You kill giants really good, and you lift stuff really good, but you're not super bright all the time. And so that rune would go in your bag, and when certain things happen in game, it will tell you to weird, and that's where you draw the rune out of the bag and it has an effect.
Okay.
If your rune bag ever runs out, you die because your fate is over.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay.
Not dying. I like the mechanic though.
Yeah.
So it could be interesting, especially if you're doing I'm just trying to spitball a scenario here. So if you're trying to do a mental challenge of some kind, whether you're trying to outwit someone or beat them in a game of riddles, and you pull out the Thor's rune, you come off looking like a bit of an idiot, perhaps, because that's not something that would be typically tied to intelligence, but more physical strength.
So that's kind of the idea. But the way it works is you would roll your dice, and based on the result, you You're always successful in this
Okay.
game. Actually, you cannot fail on a dice roll.
Oh, okay.
The question is, how much does it cost you to be successful? Right. So the worse you fail by, the heavier the cost.
Okay. Okay.
You will always succeed at a task, but it's about how much you have to spend to get there. Right?
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
And so, let's say I was, and so if you fail, it will tell you suffer 2 woe, which is like a bad thing,
Mhm.
or you can weird from your bag. And when you weird from your bag, the rune is permanently removed, but it changes it to a success. And
Okay.
if the rune is tied to what you're doing, it becomes a critical success.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
And so, you have anywhere from 3 to 5 runes in the bag, depending on character creation, and it kind of goes from there. So,
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting mechanic. I like that. That's unique.
yeah, I've been working on it for like 4 years, so I, hope it's got something behind it.
Nice.
Where I wasted
Nice.
a lot of time over the years.
Now, it sounds like the players are Vikings, so of the Norse sort of people.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it's about community, and so when you make your character, you actually start by defining the community you live in and what sort of trials and blessings or good things kind of resonate in that community, and that impacts that impacts character creation. And then it takes some elements from Pendragon, which I'm an avowed fan of. Anybody who follows me on the internet knows how much I love Pendragon. And it has seasons, and so you have the summer season, and you have spring, summer, and winter. And so spring is like the year is starting, and there's some stuff you do. The GM draws from his bag that gives you like an omen for the year. That impacts, so like if you draw the wealth rune, all the crops grow better, and trade is easier for your community.
Okay.
But some of them are detrimental. And then the summer is like the adventure session. That's where you go raiding, or you deal with problems threatening your home, or whatever, right? Internal power struggles, anything you can think of. And then the winter phase is sort of this macro game where you have to manage your farms. Because the big thing about a lot of Viking RPGs they miss is that being a Viking, specifically a Viking, which means raider, basically, was a part-time job. Right? It wasn't your sole profession. You still had a farm at home. You still had responsibilities, be it, maybe you were a landowner who had multiple tenant farmers or something, but you still had stuff you had to do that wasn't just sailing around in a boat, conquering stuff or raiding stuff. And so the game tries to center the conversation on who are these people when they're at home. We all know who they are when they land at Lindisfarne. That's abundantly clear. But that's kind of the direction it takes.
Nice. Nice.
I like that. I like that because the modern day trope is so heavily Vikings are just raiders. They jump on their long ships and they don't exist outside of that. So I kind of like that.
Yeah. I see Burrito asked a question about if there are any options for non-Scandinavian and Viking characters. And the answer is yes. It's about community. So whoever is in that community can be a player character. And so you could do something akin to the 13th Warrior, right? Where you had a traveler from distant, I forget where he's from, Saudi Arabia, I believe he's from in the movie, or Moorish Spain, right? Who has traveled up there. And backgrounds are divided by what you were trained to do growing up. So farmer or hunter, merchant, those are all kind of, there's no classes, it's just backgrounds.
Gotcha.
And so you could be a merchant from somewhere else who has traveled here and taken up here, and it's about the people who live in the community. So, kind of anything goes as long as you can make sense of it in a historical perspective.
So a little bit like the Christian monk that was with Ragnar in the Viking show.
Exactly.
For a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with how the Viking Age and the Scandinavian cultures traveled so far, all the way to Rus, to the New World, to Paris and Constantinople. I mean, it's really easy to justify a character from almost anywhere in this community.
Nice.
And the Vikings were, for all their faults, of which they had very many, and let's not pretend otherwise, they also were very accepting of other cultures, because if you can row a boat and swing an axe, you have a place here, right? Like,
Right.
It's silly to pretend that they would go raiding, and then when people died, they wouldn't just say, "Do you want to ride on a boat back to where we're from?" Great. Let's do it. We need somebody to pull the oar.
Exactly.
Like I think I've spent a lot of time reading I have shelves of books, history books about Viking Age.
Nice.
Here, like 4 or 5 shelves, and the one thing, especially lately, everybody seems to agree on is we probably don't really understand how widespread heritages and cultures were with the Vikings, because so many people died. They would probably just take anybody from anywhere and bring them home, right? There is no reasonable way they were concerned about that.
That's actually pretty funny.
Yeah. So.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'm loving the map, and I love the little details with the trees and the towns is great. I know we went back and forth on a couple styles of archaic maps to look at when we were talking about this. And the water is one I'm really excited about. So if I recall correctly, you found a similar pattern that inspired this in an old archival middle-aged map, right?
Yeah. So I actually, Alan, like right at the beginning when you and I were talking about this, I went off and I was digging through some maps. Because there's a lot of maps from, let's say, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, but they just start to have the wrong feel to them. And I started to find some older maps from like 900, 1000 AD, 1100 AD. They started to have the right feel. But honestly, like if I gave you one of these maps, it would look like a jellyfish had literally just landed from 1,000 feet above onto the paper. It's like they're almost illegible. And I was like, I can't do that. Does it look nice as an abstract work of art? Yes. Is it practical? Can it be used as a map in an RPG? No. So it was a real struggle. And then, honestly, I was sitting here one day, and I was like, let me go look at the map I've got on the wall behind me. I have a map that my mother bought me when I left England, and it's a proper map from around 1400, something like that. So the era is a little bit late, but it started to give me some inspiration, and it started to point me in the right direction. And it's a genuine map, by the way. It's like literally an antique. And using that, I actually started to piece together some different maps that I felt had the right components going on. One was for how to treat the actual borders. That's one thing I got from the map behind me, funny enough. And I think that works well. They do trees a little bit like this, but there was another archive map that I found where the style for the trees and the style for the buildings came from this archive map. And I was like, you know what? I think that's appropriate. I could imagine a Christian monk drawing like this. And then I think it was the same map again that had hills like this. They didn't do mountains, but I was like, I'm going to do the hills a little bit like this, a very abstract, very sort of side on. And I think it works. It just started to come together. That same map had the water like this. And I've never done water like this before. And I was like, you know what? I think this could work. I think this is going to look really freaking pretty, And we've still got to put lots of monsters on here. We've still got to throw a compass rose in the top left corner there. Because, okay, this is a small segue, Alan. I once did a map. It was maybe one of the best maps I've ever done. But because I didn't put a compass rose on there, people were giving it a thumbs down. And ever since then, I've been like, I should probably include a compass rose. Even maybe because they had they had the navigation crystals and things. They probably had a sense of navigation. I don't think it's going to be completely out of line putting a compass rose on here, but I'm drawing one that is obviously, it's got the ravens and shit going on there, and it's going to look like part of the map, and I think it will be appropriate, But yeah, I found some archived maps just to pull some styles from, and I probably narrowed it down to about 3 or 4, and one of them was completely illegible. It's just the land masses were blobs. They were like tentacle arms and things. But the style of some of the components, I was like, that could work. Let's pull that style in. So this became a smorgasbord of different sort of resources in the end.
Great. Well, it looks great. And it's funny you mentioned the blobs, because it reminds me of when I was working on a RPG based on the Punic Wars. I was learning about Roman maps. One of the things everybody was saying is, The land masses are terrible. You no idea what's going on, but those roads, 100% accurate every time. You know where you're going.
Nice.
I actually, because you know, you obviously know that I did the Britannia map, right?
Right.
That's when you and I started talking. And that was a similar sort of research endeavor because, yeah, you're right. Roman maps, they didn't give a shit about land mass shape. They didn't care about, like, rivers and, or really, I should say, streams or streams. I'm going smaller, like lakes and seas and
Right.
things like that. It was like, get on this road, by this gate, and just follow it, and you will end up at this settlement over here. Then get on this road from that settlement, and you'll end up that other settlement over there. And that it looks like a London Underground, map. But that's what they cared about. Get on this road. This is where you're going to end up. Keep doing that, and you'll end up where you want to be. Who cares about the shape of the land around you? And I love that. It's such a practical map.
Well, and it's interesting because, like you just said, the way a map looks for a culture tells you what they care about. Right? You can tell a lot from a culture and how they communicated travel and what was important to them.
100%. 100%. I actually really like that aspect of it because you're spot on. It's and like you look at a map like that and people go, well, that's a shit map. It's like, no, it's not. In the same way that a map of the London Underground is not shit. It enables you to get from A to Z and knowing how you get there perfectly. So for the users of that map, it's spot on, and I love it.
Yeah.
Princess Strega in the chat says that once she pitched the idea of a cosmic moth the size of a planet, and the interior wings where the land masses were. That's a crazy idea for a map. That's kind of awesome.
That is a crazy idea for a map. That is.
Nice. Now, I guess to the people that live on those land masses, are they aware that they are on a giant moth?
Does it disturb them when it flaps? Like, how does that...
How would they draw their maps? Do they draw the wing? Do they see the wing? Yeah, and I guess does their climate change as the moth twitches its wings?
I imagine if it's a giant cosmic moth the size of a planet, the wing beat would be akin to our year, right? Maybe it takes a year to do the full push up and down.
Oh, there you go.
And so that's how you measure time, and gravity would change as you went.
Ooh.
That's kind of cool.
I'm having ideas now.
Nice.
Strega throwing out the crazy awesome idea. Get the juices flowing. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So what is this monster you're drawing?
Well, so this is a test for scale and size and general concept, and I've just taken it off one of the other maps because it just looks ridiculous. Looks like a little blobfish, and I fell in love with him. He looks so cute. So I think this is the scale we're gonna go with. I'm gonna color him up. I'm actually gonna change the water around him here. Mm-hmm. I think that scale is about right. I think we're gonna go kind of nuts with this type of thing. And then we're going to do the usual sea serpents and stuff like that, and some real bizarre shit. And I was noticing on some of the other maps too, like the maps of the period, they would draw even little guys on not only just on boats, but fighting monsters on the land or pulling a monster onto the land. And I fell in love with that idea, and I think we're going to do it on this map right here. I've like all of these little stories going on.
I love it.
And I kind of want to... I've got a map too somewhere which actually explains some of the Viking sail routes. I don't want to mark them on the map. I don't think that would be period. But I do want to kind of draw some boats on those main sailing points. Kind of almost as an homage, so to speak.
Yeah, that's great. And we went back and forth on locations to put on the map. Try not to overload it, but still hit the important stuff. And I sent you a few towns you never heard of. I know. And I remember thinking, I feel like these are super obscure. But I remember thinking, but they're in England. Melissa will know where they are. England's not that big.
No, you put a few out there that I was well, okay, I had heard of it, but I actually never knew where it was. Lindisfarne.
Right.
Never knew where Lindisfarne was. In fact, I'm going to be honest with you all. I'm a bit of a history nut, right? But my education in England was really focused on America more than English or European history. It was kind of just, it wasn't a great education. So I came into adult life really not knowing anything about English history. I didn't know anything about the English Civil War, for example. And it was about 10 years ago when I said, I need to correct this. I don't know actually anything about European history, English history, nothing. So I started doing some reading, and I had no freaking idea that the Vikings owned half of freaking Great Britain for a while.
Oh, Danelaw?
Yeah. I had no idea.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I studied history. That was my big educational focus, and I've retained a deep passion for that. Like, my shelves are full of biographies and history books. I just buy history textbooks to read because I find them interesting. And my latest kick is the English Civil War. And it's been really interesting learning about the English Civil War. Not a topic they ever taught in America, but it has so many parallels to the American Revolution and details. I was going through it, and I was like, this is the thing they should be teaching because it matters. It's interesting. It's interesting to learn and know and form opinions about Oliver Cromwell and realize other people have wildly different opinions.
Well, the good news is we didn't teach it in England either, so you're not alone in that education there. It was freaking ridiculous, honestly. When I started to look back at it, I started to I realized we did nothing about European history. Even from this period, right? Pick your 900 AD through to 1600 on all of the shaping forces that happened. We learned none of that. None of it. And then when you go to even just England itself or the Great Britain, and I realize I've watched all of these films that are talking about these events, and I'm like, I actually know nothing about them. I have an English Civil War army, and I know nothing about the English Civil War. And it was kind of in that kick that I had to learn more that I started to read about Danelaw and the likes, and I was like, holy crap, the Danes came across not just as raiding, they took over. They were running the show for a while, and I had no freaking idea at all that was a thing.
Well, I imagine the English are still bitter about how the Danes got all the women because they actually took baths. So
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Still a little cranky about that.
Little crabby. Yeah, it's one of those things where public education in regards to history, whether it be our country's history or other countries' history, in my opinion, is purely lacking. I never took any advanced education history courses. I only took what was required of me when I was in high school. And to this day, I know one semester, not 1 semester, 1 year was U.S. history and 1 year was world history. In a 6 to 8 month period, I'm going to learn all of world history. No, and to this day, I couldn't name you one thing that I learned in that freaking class because it was probably the most banal, obscure thing ever. In my opinion, history should be taught every year of high school. It should be a requirement as a minimum just to get that general degree, even if it's not even related to history, in basic college courses, because there's so many important events that should not be forgotten throughout history in not just in this country but in every country. Major events that occurred, wars that occurred, so many conflicts or political decisions that have happened over the years.
Well, I don't know if you've listened to it, but the Revolutions podcast,
I have not. I'm going to write that down.
Is brilliant. It is so good. And it starts with the English Civil War, and he traces these revolutions through history. So he starts with the English Civil War, and then he goes to the American Revolution, then he goes to the French Revolution, and then he works his way down. I think he's currently on the Russian Revolution of the early 1900s.
Okay.
But so he does the English Civil War, and it's fascinating, and you learn a lot. But he's really good at drawing parallels. He's like, this family will show up when we do the American Civil War because They have a grandkid who is a general there, fighting on the same ideological side. Or this document, there are literally phrases from this document in Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Like, the stuff happening here doesn't just end when the Civil War is over. Those ideas are going to propagate. You know, and Lafayette shows up in the American Revolutionary War. He shows up in the French Revolution. And the way they view him is totally different. Hero to America, the French kind of thought he was a dillweed. You know, and it's so fascinating to listen to him talk about it. The English Civil War stuff was great.
Nice.
Yeah, and if you would honestly asked me like 5 years ago, well, okay, tell me about the English Civil War. What started it? Outside of the protagonist, I actually knew nothing. And that I feel that that's a little bit of a failed education, at least on that front.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give England credit. They have a lot more history than America does in some senses. We don't do a good job of doing American history prior to 1600s. We tend to just kind of start there.
Nice.
And we could do better, which makes me sad.
History tends to be a little bit of a bastard stepchild, doesn't it? In some ways,
Yeah.
it's like just people just don't want to do it. Yeah, it's a fascinating subject. Hey, Alex Fixer, good to see you here.
Now I know that it's not Viking related, but you were talking about obviously all these revolutions in history, and you were bringing up the Revolutions podcast, and you mentioned the Russian Revolution, which my big passion is film, and so I was wondering, as a history buff yourself, I was wondering if you were familiar with the film, the 2002 film, The Russian Ark.
Yes, I am.
Okay, good, thank you. That's for people who don't know, it's about a, I would not say it's about a 90 to 100 minute film that was done in a single take. And it's done from a first-person perspective from this Russian character who's traveling through this Russian museum that currently is a museum, but in the past it was I believe it was like a castle, like for royalty and stuff. And what happens is you kind of find out as the movie progresses that this point of view character is kind of displaced in time, and as he's traveling through the museum, he's being actually transported to that same location at different points in Russian history, and he's accompanied in kind of like this ethereal time travel-y space by a French marquis, this diplomat, and this marquis is the one who's able to kind of more interact with the scenes as you go in, because the point of view character kind of has to sit back and show the audience what's kind of going on in the scene. And the two of them have a lot of interesting interactions, and the film culminates into, I think it's supposed to be like the night before the revolution kicks off, the Russian Revolution kicks off, and it's a very interesting film. I highly recommend seeing it, if not from the filmmaking perspective that this entire film was done in a single take, or the fact that it's from a POV kind of perspective, but it's interesting too from a historical standpoint.
Yeah, it's we just, like 2 weeks ago, we just watched a docuseries about the last Tsar.
Nice.
Right, and it was a little sensationalized, a little, lurid, maybe is the word I'd use. But it was stuff, I had read about, but my wife hadn't read it, and she was like, I had no idea, this is so fascinating. We were talking about it and all this stuff that happened with the last of the Romanovs, and Anastasia and the revolution and all these different things that went into it. And it's really interesting to kind of study, because you see the same things. History repeats itself. It's the same stuff happening again and again. Like, the only reason the American Revolution was different than the English Civil War was there was an ocean, really. Like, the fight was about the same things, right? A lot of people were responding the same way, but because there was an ocean, it made certain things change. And it's just really fascinating to see the parallels that you don't know exist until you kind of really get into it.
Right.
So is
Jack,
it your passion for history that is driving a lot of your creativity?
I actually it's a new thing, yeah. So we have Salt Wolves of the Whale World at Gallant. I sold an RPG to Osprey Publishing.
Nice.
Based on the Templars, and it starts on October 13th, a Friday, where the Templar Order is attacked by King Philip of France, and unmanned. And you're the last of the Templars, the last 30 Templars who escape, and you're trying to secret away the treasures of the Templars. And it's kind of this really cool toolbox. I say really cool about my own game. It's really cool. I'm gonna
You can. You're allowed. It's okay.
And it's coming out from Osprey. You can pre-order it now, by the way, on Amazon. So, it's I kind of took all the weird Templar conspiracies and I put them in a book, and then I said, pick the ones you want.
Nice.
Right? Do you want Templars who do weird Gnostic magic? That's in here. Do you want Templars who are secreting away, that's not right. Secreting away, the Holy Grail? That's in the book. Are they just normal dudes who are misunderstood? That's in the book. Like, you just kind of turn all these dials and make your own conspiracy. And it's a really historically focused game in a lot of ways, and it was a lot of fun to write.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
I love history. I'm always telling people, they're like, this fantasy world is so believable. I'm like, you should read some real world history if you want to know some crazy stuff. There's some bonkers stuff that you could not write into a fantasy world.
Nice. That's awesome.
Are we playing out world building? We're not really talking about world building. I'm drawing a map for Gallant Knight Games, and he's our wonderful guest tonight. I'm drawing sea monsters while we talk to Gallant Knight about this and many other RPG and history related subjects. Yeah. We have touched upon world building a little bit, but it's just part of the smorgasbord.
By all means, ask any world building questions.
Yeah.
We have quite the panel tonight with Alyssa and Alan here.
Don't ask me, ask Alan.
I wouldn't proclaim to be an expert at all, so maybe don't ask anybody.
I don't know. You two have actually done some pretty from the sounds of it. I know Alyssa from experience, and then you from what I'm learning here tonight. It sounds like your world building is pretty on point. Gotta say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
World building is fun now. It is a fun aspect, I think, of the tabletop RPG writing side of things.
I can't believe I'm going to say this on the internet because everything's forever on the internet, and I'm going to regret this one day. But it's actually my least favorite part.
Oh, world building?
I don't find it enjoyable to do, and I think it's. Let me rephrase that. I don't find detailed world building enjoyable. Doing something in broad strokes, like here's the basic ideas, here's some big themes or whatever, that's fine. I like that. But especially as a publisher, because it's going to get changed at everybody's table, I feel like I'm kind of wasting a lot of effort that could be put towards other things in the game that would make it better. And that's so it's kind of a weird hang up. And I still do world building, and we still make detailed settings and stuff. I don't let that stop me. But of all the parts I do, it's the part I'm like, The only thing I don't like more is writing adventures.
I think one thing I've discovered with being with Jack is, actually Star's talking about how it's his or her favorite part of it, or something that they really like. One thing I found is I love kind of like crafting worlds and continents and thinking about countries and politics and things like that. But a little bit like you, Alan, I can pull from history. It's something I like to do. And while Jack is right down on the streets and the people and the personalities and what's motivating them, I can't do what Jack does. I'm thinking up here, and he can't do what I'm doing. So it's kind of, I think you've got to have like multiple skills, and some of them you just don't like doing that much.
Right. Well, and that's the great thing about RPGs is there's so many different parts that there's something for everybody,
Right.
And I think that is one of the things that drives me to historical stuff is I can always say just read a book, read a Wikipedia article,
Right.
Totally. Get up to speed. It's easy to get up to speed.
Totally.
So I definitely love world building, but I definitely kind of stop. I'm like, all right, so here's the basic themes, here's the big ideas, here's some big bad guys or whatever, and go play in the sandbox and make up the rest. That's not my job.
Right. Funnily enough, I'm doing a little bit of writing for I run a a custom-ish Shadowrun
Sure.
role-playing game for like our home game, and then I'm planning to run it like at like some cons in the future and stuff. But it's one of those things where I care about the adventure, and I care about the characters that I'm creating, and I'm caring about the big bad. And I do have an overall plot that I think is like world destruction, that type of thing. But it's like I don't want somebody to ask me about like Seattle, because that's notoriously where Shadowrun takes place. Or like I had the party travel to Denver, which is like in the Shadowrun world is like crazy complex, and it has all these different political things going on. Well, like Alyssa said, that's kind of at the level that I personally don't really care about.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of like, I really hope nobody asks me about the local politics, because that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to do for my adventure, and I don't care. please don't ask me about politics or government or what happened here.
Well, now I'm going to. I mean, shit,
of course
man.
you are. Of course you are.
If we ever play, I'm gonna make a list. I'm gonna make a list, and the next time I find you at a convention, I'll be like, I have this notebook of questions about.
I'll be like, damn it. No, and that, you know what? And it'll be one of those things where I'll be like, I can't answer these yet, but give me that list, and I'll make sure I have the answer to them, because these were things I never thought to ask or to think about, because my brain doesn't go there. So.
Well, and it's interesting when you talk to somebody who really loves world building, is really good at it. The things they think about are like things I never think about. What do people eat? What are common types of street food? That's like, I'm like, I never wondered what street food would be like, but that's a question that could be asked and make sense.
Right. Which is funny, because that's the type of thing that I don't know if the players will ever ask it, but not only will I have the street food listed out, but I'll actually have the stats and personalities for 3 different street vendors that are selling different types of street food. And watch the entire game, no one will even talk to those people, and I'll just go, well, guess I'll put them in the file for if I ever need to pull out a street vendor in the future.
We were playing a superhero RPG, and one of the players was like a sponsored superhero being sponsored by the universe's equivalent of S.H.I.E.L.D., right?
Okay.
Yeah. They had like a cover job, and they were secretly set up as a super and stuff, and they worked at a fast food restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And the player, they asked me, and they're like, what fast food restaurant is it? And I'm like, I don't know. And so my answer was a crawfish shack. It was like somebody's crawfish shack. And I quickly Googled all the recipes I could find that use crawdads and crawfish, and just I mocked up a menu in the layout program, and I was like, here's the menu. It was terrible. Like, I would never eat at that restaurant. It looked but I made a whole menu, and I gave it to them, and they would bring it to game every week, and they'd be like, all right, here's what did you order? You ordered the number 1, and they'd have the menu, and they'd know, and I'd be like, sure, that's a thing.
Totally.
So it's interesting.
Nice. And see, and that's the kind of stuff that I care about as well for my GMing, but I don't know if my players ever do, or any players that I might potentially do. So akin to that, I actually have a thing where, the meeting with the Mr. Johnson for the Shadowrun run is going to be like at like some Cajun restaurant or something. Just in case, I do actually have bookmarked a Cajun menu. In case one of the players decides to be a smartass and wants to order off it, I can be like, boom, here's the menu. But for all I know, they'll just be like, cool, let's get the job, let's get out of here, done, we're out. Like, all right, well, that's fine.
And it's funny, because what the GM loves isn't necessarily something the player loves either.
Right, exactly. You kind of have to accommodate on both ends.
It's always fun.
So this might be a really good time, though, to point out, actually, before, I'm going to do this. Beast Foolish, we're going to get back to that. I want to point out something that Alan has got going on right now. I'm going to bring it up here. Alan, can you tell us about this?
Yeah. So it's the Kickstarter for Blue Planet Recontact. Blue Planet Recontact is a new edition of the classic science fiction RPG from the 2000s. The original creative team is back and doing a new edition, and we're partnered with them as their publisher, distributor, and general project management, helping them do the thing stuff. It's a hard science fiction world set on a very aquatic planet. And it's a fantastic world with a lot of really detailed world building. If you love world building, you're going to love this. And it's got a lot of eco themes. Like they say on the Kickstarter page, it's kind of inspired by classic science fiction, and even though this stuff came out after, stuff like The Expanse, Blade Runner, Outland, that all kind of has a similar feel to this aquatic frontier world setting. If you're interested, you can check out the Kickstarter. The link is in the chat. It's also in the video here.
It's
But
massively
there's also-
funded too. Massively funded.
Yay! But there's also an 80-page free quick start on DriveThruRPG.
Oh, nice.
You can check out some of the world building and the revised rules, etc.
Alex Fixit is a big, apparently, Blue Planet. Have nearly the entire original Blue Planet setting.
Well, I hope you get a chance to back the Kickstarter. We've funded things like a slipcase, bookmarks, stuff like that. So we're going to make a really pretty set of books. It's really exciting.
This looks really cool. This looks really cool.
Yeah, when I was talking to Jeff Barber, one of the original creatives who's helming this project, about it, we kind of went back and forth, and I was passingly familiar with Blue Planet. It sort of predates my entry into the RPG world as a player. Yes, you can be a orca with a laser on their head. And we were talking, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with it so much that I went and bought all the out-of-print books that I could find for it.
Nice.
And I got them on my shelf. So it's a really great game and setting, and I think people who back it are going to be thrilled.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get in on this myself. This looks really, really, really cool. Awesome. That looks so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the artwork is fantastic as well.
Thanks. I'm going to take credit for that, even though I didn't do it. No. Our artist, Stefan Shaw, did a fantastic job bringing Jeff's information to life. It's great. It's going to be a very beautiful book.
Nice. Princess Strega says the art sort of reminds her of Transhuman Space. So could maybe a similar artist, or maybe they have some very similar styles.
Yeah, I don't know Transhuman Space, actually, so I can't comment on that. Unless it's something I know by another name and I'm not thinking of, which could be a name.
Nice. So, and Alan, you were on the verge of asking something before we started talking about world building. You were.
Don't remember anymore.
I don't remember either.
Although I will also point out that Beast Foolish did ask, have you guys tried Dawn of Worlds for world building?
Dawn of Worlds.
I have extensively. I love it. It's like this macro game you play before your session 0 is like a session -1.
Oh, indeed.
And you play the deities of creation. You get like these points where you spend to do things like raise land masses, and you draw the map as you go.
Oh, interesting.
And you can create continents, and you can be like, I'm gonna split the continent in half because I am a vengeful god.
Interesting.
And you can do things like that, and it's a really kind of a fun group activity to do.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
If you dig Dawn of Worlds, though, you should check out Arium Bridge. It's not Bridge. Arium Discover. And Arium, I forget the other name. It's a 2-book set. They're on DriveThru now, I believe. Let me check that. They just came out from Adept Icarus Press.
Icarus Press.
Yep. And it's create and discover, and they are exactly that idea in a world. Like they call it a sticky note world building RPG, where you use sticky notes to create a world as a group.
Oh, you know what? I'm familiar with. As soon as you said the two names of the two little things, that actually remind. I think I even, to tell you the truth, I actually think I might even have these kind of like in my save for later list on Amazon. I think, if I recall, that's fantastic.
I used to live in Utah, and Willman was local to me in Utah, so we know each other real well.
Oh, cool.
And he did a great job with this game.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so if you dig world building as a game, it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'll have to try that. Alex Fixit Populous. Man, that's a blast from the past.
Oh, I haven't thought about that game in years.
You know, it's funny. I actually once saw it wasn't an actual game system, but it was something that somebody created for themselves to create a map. And it was a picture floating around like Facebook and other social media sites for a while for like RPG people. And it was like they had a key that they had created for dice. Okay, and it was the type of die. So it was like D4 through D20. And then it also was then the number rolled was relevant as well. And it was things like mountains, it was like mountain plains, you know, it was like all these different like, you know, things. And then they basically just had a big white sheet of paper and they just rolled a bunch of dice.
Yeah.
From there, they were like, this is going to be my map. And then they kind of drew it out based on their key, like what they created. I was like, that's kind of, for someone like me who can't think of like a big picture map, Alyssa's like, you know, slapping me upside the head and be like, just get someone who knows maps, you dumbass. And I'm like, okay, sorry. You know. Yeah. But for me, who doesn't do maps, I thought it was genius. Because that's not where my head's at.
Yeah, there's lots of really fun tools out there to use. And I will, subtle plug, I will say our game Tiny Gods has world building rules and mechanics in it. So, you know, you can get that on drive-thru. Subtle plug. Tiny Gods, Gallant Games.
Hey man, you plug absolutely anything that you feel is appropriate to plug. There is no problem with that here.
Well then, just go buy all my games, people.
There you go. Do it.
Get out there.
You release like 50 to 70 products a year. I'm not going to list them all. Just go buy stuff.
Nice.
George Fields was in the chat only about 2 weeks ago. You weren't even here, and he was like, oh yeah, they do good stuff. So get out there, Gallant Knight Games, do a search, buy some of their stuff. Jack, make a note of that world building that Alan just mentioned too. That could be a fun purchase.
The one that he was talking about from Icarus, the Archeum.
No, something that they have themselves.
Oh, the one you were just talking about with the Tiny Gods.
Oh, Tiny Gods.
Tiny Gods. Yeah,
Tiny Gods. I've got the page up right now.
No.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here going like, okay, so I mean, I'm on your drive-through page, so you've got like, you know, tiny dungeons and tiny supers as well. I'm sitting here like going like, I think I might be one of those people that might be acquiring all of your products here pretty soon. I'm like, these look all fantastic.
Well, thank you. The Tiny line is our best-selling line, and it's really fun, minimalist rules like take on RPGs. So
nice.
Very proud of it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Princess Strega says Critical Locations is a great book. Is that one of yours?
No, that's the D20 Modern book, and it's fantastic. It's like a D20 source book for modern cities, kind of.
Ooh, nice.
And
so critical locations, as in locations, not locations exactly. On the body.
I think they were trying to be clever.
Okay.
Right.
But it's a really fantastic book, and it has some really great like city maps.
Nice.
For modern cities that are really fun. So.
Yeah, but Alex Fixin and Princess Strega, the two of them are looking out for me. They both said, you know, look at that book for my Shadowrun-ness that I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
So I've got that now bookmarked as well. I think I'm gonna be a lot poorer. I think by the end of this evening.
It's gonna be a very.
I'll be like, have the taxes gone through? Am I getting a rebate? Well, not anymore. It's going back to the cause.
Well, I'll be able to eat tomorrow because of it, so I'll take it.
Perfect.
And actually, cool. Alan, you made a big step. Like just a couple of months ago or so. You're doing this full time now, right?
Yeah, since January 1st, I have been full time at Gallant Knight Games. It is my only job. We built it up where it could support us.
I mean, that's a big thing. That's a big milestone. So congratulations.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, but it took 4 years, and you know, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's fantastic when that can happen. That's, you know, I'm definitely I'm jealous that you've been able to do that. That's fantastic. So many people they try and they can't make it work out. You know, it's funnily enough, you know, you even mentioning the fact that the podcast that, you know, you listened to before, I know there's some people that are able to they're able to quit their day job because their podcast they've worked on. So the fact that, you know, 4 hard years of working and now you're able to do it full time, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. It's one of those jobs where everybody's like, that sounds great, and I'm like, you don't realize what I do 90% of the time. It's like sourcing print quotes and managing freelancers and paying bills. Right. Like the fun part is like 10%.
Right.
The
Yeah,
rest
that's
of it's just real small business job.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to
So
wear
is-
so many hats now.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are
Which
just
is
like,
why-
well, you just sit around and write role playing games. That's so easy. It sounds so. You're like, I'm gonna kill you. That's so. It is not how it is.
I'm a line manager. I'm a marketer. I'm a part-time lawyer now because I have to do all the contract. You know, it's everything.
Right.
Which is why I hire freelancers who can do things like make maps, so I don't have to learn how to do it
Right. Exactly.
because I don't have the time to get this good.
Right.
Which
But
is
that's
why I'm
cool.
grateful for people like Alyssa. who will
Well,
take time and save me the
I'm
work.
honestly, I'm flattered, man, just to be, and honored just to be able to do this for you. I think you know at this point that I do the maps because I want to contribute something to what you're doing there. I want to contribute something that you can go off and do some canvas, poster-sized prints of it, you know, for your audience. And for me, that's what I bring to the industry, you know. And you are a wonderful client in that you have been just like, this is what I need, these are the locations I need, do it, go. And you've given me so much creative freedom, and honestly, that's really, really, really appreciated. There can be the opposite of you, and that's hard. It stifles creativity. With this one, I was able just to go all freaking out on it, and I've had a lot of fun because of it.
Well, thank you for the kind words. You know, when I started Gallant, one of my rules, I set 3 rules for myself. The first was a fair pay rate, so I let people within reason tell me what they want to be paid, and we pay them. Like, we pay 10 cents a word for writers, stuff like that. We pay really well.
That's outstanding, yeah.
And then my second rule was just let the professionals be professionals. I want to hire people I don't have to manage because they're pros. And so every time I work with somebody, my goal is like, I want to be as involved as you want me to be, and no more, right? Like, that's my goal, is to say, you're the pro, you just do your thing, because I trust you to be professional and passionate. And I find when people are kind of given free reign to get invested, they do their best work, right? Somebody who's passionate really is going to turn in something great. And so, you know, those are kind of the 2 guiding things that help me, make this a full-time job, right? Working with people who can elevate that to this point, and trying to give back to them by letting them do the kind of work they want to do at a good rate is important to me.
That's kind of old school right there, but I actually really appreciate it. I'm a big, huge fan of, these are the experts, let them do their thing, because that's what experts do, you know? And
I think it comes from my decade-long career as a project manager and data analyst in the software world, where I was never the expert. My job was just to manage the experts, and I was like, I don't need to know this stuff. I just need you to know this stuff and make sure it gets done. That's not what I'm here about. So I tried to bring that with me as much as possible.
Well, I think we share that, because I am a project manager, so yeah, maybe that's why we think alike and that stuff. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Nice.
So, I remember I was going to ask. I just remembered. Jack, you were
Yes.
big into movies.
I am.
I am also big into movies.
Fantastic. Hey.
I love movies. I consume loads of media. So the
Don't
only
consume-
media I don't consume is video games. I don't play video games.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I just can't do it.
I don't consume as much. I wish I consumed more film than I did. That I do. I used to a lot, and then now it's kind of it's way produced. But it is still my passion, and it's still something that I try to maintain on a regular basis. But it's one of those things where I'm never seeing like the latest stuff that's out, and there's certainly a lot of classics that I've missed that I'm trying to catch up on. But it's one of those things where I'm always trying to stay informed in the filmmaking process and the world and news, and then I'm trying to see as many movies as I can that I have time for. So that's great. I love that. That's you too. That's great.
If you a recommendation, the best streaming service I pay for is the Criterion Channel's streaming service.
Yes, we are currently not subscribed to that one, but it's been one where there's been a couple of times where I've been looking at, so what is this streaming on? And it's Criterion. And trust me, it's one of those things where it's like, because I'm never gonna be a famous like film critic, or I'm never gonna be a famous like, whatever, or journalist or anything. But it's one of those things where it's like, if I was able to pay Criterion to let me go to their closet, because they do that. They allow filmmakers and like critics and like big people in the industry to go to their Criterion closet with a little baggie, and they basically they can pull and take whatever they want out of the entire Criterion library, and they're able to just fill their bag and just take a Criterion copy of anything. When I heard about that, I was like, if I could have one wish, it would be to just go into the it's basically like an archive. It's like archive stacks of just all of their stuff.
I'm not sure I could do a small baggie. I would have analysis paralysis trying to decide what to do with it.
Yeah, because basically you could maybe fit like maybe a dozen films in there, and that's it. And they're like, and we'll give them to you for free. You can go. I was like, how can I get on that wait list, please? I'm the definition of a nobody. What do I need to pay to get on that list?
I have shelves of Criterion movies. I love them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But they, the best part about subscribing is they send you regular discounts.
Oh, cool.
And so I'll be like,
I'm
gonna go snag some Blu-rays or some DVDs.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, what the crap?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it kind of hurts me to say it, but I have slowly started moving away from physical media, which is kind of hurts me inside to even admit that out loud.
I have definitely pared down. I now try to only buy physical media where I want to consume the extras.
There you go. Yeah.
That's my rule. And like, would I watch the director's cut or the commentary or whatever? If yes, buy it in physical. If no, just rent it on Amazon or something.
Right. Yeah, it was a friend of mine who mentioned on Facebook these days, pretty much since the pandemic started last year. I've been doing these daily like film posts where it's like my personal, subjective favorites to films. But and I change it up. Every day is a completely new thing. Today was my favorite films that I've seen from 1954. Kind of a thing. Or was it 55? What the hell was today? Anyways, but one of them, but one of the ones that I did last week, I mentioned Patton as one of my favorites. I think it was my top 5. It was my top 10 favorite openings to films. And one of my top 10s personally is the George C. Scott as Patton doing the the Third Army speech at the beginning, and a friend of mine brought up the fact that Coppola, who wrote the script, was fired actually from that project, and but the only thing they kept from his original writing was that speech from the beginning of the film. And I was sitting there going like, I had never heard that he was fired from that project. As a matter of fact, I had heard that I read this other interview where he was saying that it was because of the fact that he got an Oscar for the screenwriting for Patton. That's why they didn't fire him from The Godfather. So I was like, what is this? And he was like, oh yeah, he mentions it in the commentary track that he did for Patton. And I was like, shit. And I was like, I didn't know he did a commentary track for Patton. And I'm like, I'm sitting there going like, because I don't have a physical copy of Patton, I only have a digital copy of Patton. No. I've never listened to his commentary. So yeah, I need to follow your boat in that regard.
So was it true then, Jack, that what was being said?
Supposedly, I have heard from a film professor down in LA that Coppola is he recalls stories as he wishes them to be recalled as. Like he will put a spin on certain stories so it makes it come out that it looks better on his behalf. So I don't know
that a storyteller spins.
I know. Oh, shock and awe. Yeah, no, exactly. So it might be true. It might not be true. I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure maybe at the time it could be 100% true, or it could be, you know what? I'm gonna let them know that, this speech was so amazing that even though they fired me from this project, they kept this because my writing was so great. I don't know. I have no idea.
I think Alex Fixon has the right idea. We should hire some runners to raid the Criterion archive for us.
There you go. like from the Satyr Krupp in Shadowrun, Top Nuyen, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been on a wuxia film kick, so I got a bunch of King Hu Blu-rays from Criterion, stuff like that. The classic kind of the '60s Chinese wuxia films.
Nice.
Oh, so good.
Nice.
And they have a great Jackie Chan retrospective up right now on Criterion streaming service.
Oh, fantastic.
Which, not a topic I would have thought to see on Criterion, but it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, see, I think I'm gonna have to. I think I'm gonna have to. You know, it's funny. It's been one of those things where it's been on my to-do list or like my to-get list for so long that it's been in the back of my head. It's like if you haven't gotten it by now, what the hell are you even doing? I think I was jokingly saying that I'm going to be getting all these things tonight. I don't think it's a joke anymore, especially with the Criterion. I think I need to definitely get in on that. The thing is I have a monotonous day job that allows me to have stuff playing, films or videos or what have you on the side. But the problem is I need to dedicate enough attention to what I'm doing that I can't 100% focus on the film. And all of the films that are Criterion are films that you should really be watching and really be enjoying.
Well, I will tell you, HBO Max has a deal with Criterion, so they have a good selection of Criterion stuff on HBO Max.
Oh, good, because we actually have HBO Max. That's fantastic.
So they actually have they don't subtitle it like they do with DC or whatever, but they have a good slew of Criterion.
Okay, stuff. I will see what they have. That might be my entry drug into doing it.
I love that little monster attacking the coastline of France.
Yes, and I'm gonna draw a couple of French guys defending it in this blank space right here. I think we're gonna have some fun with this. I really do. I've got some examples, like I mean, this is a crazy piece, but you can see like it almost has a human face quality to it. But we've got all of these guys on the island up here, and these guys in the boat. We've got these dudes fighting down below. There's a whole story going on here. I freaking love that.
I assume that's supposed to be a narwhal. With
definitely, without a doubt. But it's like their version of it, right? This far off distance is what they're seeing. It's crazy. And then there's this thing, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's nuts. I love it.
That was what I was laughing at before. Yeah.
I want to try and capture some of this insanity. You know.
Is that a devil seahorse? Like, I'm trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah, Princess Strike is a demon whale.
Oh, I'm getting a seahorse vibe though, with the antennas and the fins on the side,
and the frills at the back.
Yeah, I'm getting a seahorse. I feel like somebody saw a seahorse on the beach and assumed there was just a bigger one.
And then look at this freaking lobster thing right here with a guy that has got captured.
There you go.
I love it.
See, this is the type of thing too. That you could see the Hill inspiration, by the way, that came in right here. But it's like if we don't draw a lobster with a guy in his pincers, we're missing an opportunity right here.
You know, as the publisher, I agree. I feel like it's a requirement.
Princess Strike, in medieval times, the gigantic lobster eats you.
I don't think that's medieval. I think all the time. I think if
all the time.
Gets you, it's just happening.
It is all the time.
This one's almost feels a bit too advanced. But what I love about it is it's just this way out freaking sea creature. We could totally put something like that in the Mediterranean, probably in that sort of coiled position because it's a nice tight sort of position right there.
Especially if you did like you're the expert. I am kind of like in Alan's boat where you're the expert. I'm gonna let you do it. But it's almost like, if you did that, like you said, it's a little too advanced. But if you did it where it's like this coiled thing, and then you did almost like that over the top Viking style dragon head on top of it, as opposed to that super intricate, sleek, almost like eel like head.
You could even do it coiling around the border.
Yeah. That would be cool. That'd be cool. No,
mean, it's
no,
not
no,
like-
this particular piece, obviously, this is way too far in the future. We're 400, 500 years from when this map was drawn, from our perspective. But I just love, like, what the hell am I looking at here? Is this a sea pig or something? And they've got this story of that there's a ship that's got him hooked. And we've got some guys that are on the inside of it. It's like Moby Dick, but
Well, if you look at it, as you can see, it's Luke Skywalker, R2D2, and Princess Leia, all sitting around. They're on the back of the fish.
It's one of those asteroid worm things.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. That's so great. I love it.
And then this thing here, I kind of like this. Again, there's a freaking lobster right here. Of course, there's a big, huge lobster. But there's actually a kaiju battle going on down there. There's a lobster versus... not quite... A seahorse. There's a seahorse versus a lobster going on right there.
I noticed how the seahorse has a big rhinoceros horn on it.
Well,
Well,
that's because
seahorses
deep
do
down,
that.
seahorses do.
All the ones where I live in North Dakota have that, so...
That's fantastic.
And then, of course, we've got ship battle going on, which is cool. And the plaintive, like, little guys going, help, no.
That sailing ship a picture back almost gave me PTSD. I've just been assembling my Black Seas miniatures from Warlord. And
Oh,
so
indeed.
many little masts, and they come with little twine to run the weight rigging, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm up for rigging my
Oh,
own.
shoot, man, you're doing that? Really? The rigging? Oh, that's hardcore.
It's twine. I'm looking at it, I'm like, I got big, fat fingers. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'3", like, like, hand it to my wife and be like, hey, honey.
Can you do this, please?
I've rigged one ship, and I have pretty fine fingers. I've rigged one ship. I think it's just one. And I was like, okay, that's enough of that. That is some serious shit right there.
Never again.
So actually, speaking of which, before we started the stream, you were telling us about a 10mm army, and Jack, you had some questions about it.
I was just curious as to what this, since the chat, he was saying how he was constructing some 10mm army, and so I was going to ask the details of said army, and what they were intended for, like what game, what system, and what game. Nice.
Yeah.
In what period?
it's
Just so the
a-
chat can.
It's actually an army for War Master from the old Games Workshop game that was 10mm. It's an Empire army for War Master.
Nice.
This one is because a local fellow would like to play.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I also do 10mm Napoleonics and Ancients, 6mm English Civil War and Ancients.
Nice.
10mm Napoleonics has to look gorgeous, man.
They look nice. I prefer the 6mm actually.
Oof. Yeah,
You,
I
know,
could
you
see
get a
that.
little more of the rank and file regiment
Yeah.
style stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like. And I play so many war games, so it's not a healthy topic. Probably, I'll probably walk away buying another army for something.
It was looking at a Napoleonic army, I think. I looked at some 6mm Roman armies, but it was Napoleonic I saw first. And then Napoleonic formations. And like you say, the rank and the file. That honestly turned my head. Like, yeah, okay, 6mm can be a real thing. And Jack and I have had the pleasure of playing several games now at wargaming conventions. Where a guy just puts thousands and thousands of 6mm on the table, and you can do some grand scale battles that way.
Yeah, it's intense. I'm a big fan of 6mm.
Yeah, and his games were always crazy. Like normally, a lot of wargaming conventions, kind of like RPG conventions. You have a finite number of players you can have at a table. Well, and we played in plenty of tables where it was like there's going to be the game master who's kind of making sure that everything's good, or I don't know what you're calling for a war game, battle master. I don't know. Referee, marshal. There you go. Exactly. And it would be like 2 people per side. Because that's like it almost seemed average. But this guy who had this Napoleonic and they were so small, he's a we know him now, not super well on a personal level, but we've known him. We've now known him now for a few years. We play typically in his games every year. It's one of those things where the battlefield is so big because all of his miniature things. It was literally like 8 people per side. It was crazy. And so just like in real life, I'm on this end of the battlefield. I have no idea what's going on that end of the battlefield.
I want to come to this convention and play this.
Yeah.
I think he'd actually really dig it. Yeah.
I'm sure I would.
He would put like
out.
down like 14, 16 feet of table.
Nice.
You know, and 8 feet deep. And just put like 8 players down, in total like 4 each side, and he would give you this mass formation each, and it felt grand, man. It felt like a grand battle.
The biggest thing we ever did was we did 10-player 6mm Roman Ancients.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Game. And we put the 2 generals in a different room with a map on the wall that had flags for where their units were. And we had 2 runners for each team, or 1 runner for each team that would run back and forth.
Oh,
and
that's
the
awesome.
orders down and give them to the field generals. They're in 3 on each side, each a flank, center, right? And so they have to run and like give this order to the left flank. And they'd have to run back to the room and get another and update them with the troop movements, and so
they have to interpret the orders and everything too.
They were trying to run the game from a room where all they had was a map with some flags on it.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Awesome.
Nice.
And it was a crushing defeat for the Romans because their marshal just couldn't get around to like writing my orders down specifically enough to tell my guys what to do.
Oh no.
Which was which is what would have happened in the real world, right? Like
right.
No, I love that. I love that because it absolutely recreates a huge part of those types of battles. That's fantastic.
Especially if you have like something akin to like the Charge of the Light Brigade, where the person that's trying to give orders, he's like, charge, and they come and run it over, and they're like, here you go, and the guy's like, they want us to charge?
Well, and we let the generals we would let the generals break the order.
Okay.
But we had this like, because game designer, so I write rules.
Right.
I wrote up this mechanic where the field marshal could remove you, like you got like discontent if you just kept ignoring their orders, and the runner would come back, hey, they ignored your order, they did this instead. They would remove them, and you could put a different field marshal in charge.
Oh no.
And so there was this like political balance at home you had to maintain, or you'd be removed from your command.
My apologies for the cat noises.
Oh,
My pouty boy is here.
I'm shocked you haven't seen my dogs. So,
as Strega mentioned, the cat meowing very loudly into the mic. Yeah, that's
There he is. There's the fella.
He's my hand is in pain.
He has saved it for this evening.
Apparently so. Yes.
Yeah, Alan, we're going to have to conspire at some point to get together and play something. Because it seems like you and I enjoy the same type of game, without a doubt.
Absolutely. No, next time we're at a convention together, we should make it happen.
Yeah, we're going to have to do something. And we're going to have to go small. I do like your idea of that small scale. My smallest so far has been 15mm, as you probably know. And I did Watling Street, and there were so many miniatures on the table. It was awesome. It was just so good.
I play so many games. I play everything up to 32mm, like 40K stuff. Nice. Like, I play. I think I counted because we moved, and then like a local game group was like, "What games do you play?" And I was like, "Well, let's see. I currently play 17 different miniature games. So which one do you want to talk to?" And I probably have multiple armies per one.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But it's a great hobby, and it totally relaxes me to get out there. And I love small scale because I don't have to paint them that well. Like, okay, these are British soldiers at Waterloo. Okay, red across the bottom, or red across the middle, white across the bottom, black across the hats. Done. Just a couple quick strokes. I don't have to. Details don't matter because nobody's seeing them anyway. Right.
Yeah, because Princess Strega asked a little ways up at a little bit ways behind us in the chat, how fine of a brush do you need for 6mm? Parent any size.
Blobs of color and move on.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest with you, that's one of the things that actually intimidates me the most. Is because even on my 15mm, I get a little bit carried away. You know? My 15mm are pretty damn detailed, but you can't keep doing that down to like 10s and 6s and 2s.
Yeah.
You just gotta, it's like, it's the impression of, and move the hell on.
Yep. Which I hate painting miniatures, so that's perfect for me. I'm like, great. There are no details here. But yeah, so I'm just about to pick up the English Civil War set that comes with 2 armies in 6mm.
Ooh.
Because I want to do some Covenanters versus Loyalists.
Funnily enough, I'm actually looking at an image of. I don't know if they're doing like a Hannibal war gaming scenario, but I'm looking at a 2mm scale army, and the soldiers themselves look pretty blobby, but the elephants. The elephants look a little bit more detailed, and they're pretty sweet. But it's 2mm wargaming. So.
I love Punic War stuff.
Yeah.
Like outside of Viking Age, Punic War is a deep passion of mine. I have so many Punic War books as well. One day I will make a Punic War RPG that involves marching across the Alps. That is a dream for me.
Nice.
I want to do that.
That's cool.
And then I'll get Alyssa to do a map for it.
Done. I am down. You said
But
Punic War and Alps.
Oh, Punic War is so great. It's so interesting. And that's one of the reasons I love, I think, history is there's so much that happens that you can just like digest and get invested in. That it's just exciting to be it's weird because I'm like, this is like 2,000 years old and then some. But yet I care so deeply about the outcome of this battle that has already happened and I can't impact it.
You know, funnily enough, kind of along those lines, we actually did Alessia at our wargaming convention, and the win conditions for the barbarians was so ludicrous because obviously the Romans have the crazy ass fortress, and it was one of those things that we had 4 hours to play, and it was like, okay, if both barbarian sides are able to breach the walls, and if one of them can at least get halfway into the fort on their move and not die by the end of the turn, the referee was like, sure, then you'll win. I mean, you could tell that he was trying to do something realistic. He was trying to do the realistic battle, but that's not how war games always work. And both sides got breached, and literally on like the last round, we were able to get to the center and have a remaining piece before the end. But he was like, "Nah, you guys lost. It doesn't matter. It's Alessia. You guys got butchered." And I was like, "God dang it, we won based on the parameters."
And I was actually fighting on the side of the Celts too on that one, or the Gauls, and
Really?
and because I always play Roman, right? I always play Roman, so I'm like, I'm gonna play on the side of the barbarians, and we won, man. We absolutely
totally
won
won.
that damn thing. That was a cool setup too. The guy every year pays a professional diorama creator to actually create his boards for him. So man, you would have flipped out looking at this thing. I'm talking about the little the lily pads or whatever they called it, with the spikes with the little holes. You know, all of that was modelled in the terrain. Then you had real little spikes out there. Then the actual walls. It was insane. For the actual troops, when you were playing the Gauls, they had little ladders, and you would have to give them to different units, and they were all little modelled. It was so good. It was so good.
I love it.
He did it once, and he put it away, and it's done. It's like, man, no, give me this.
He was a bit of a crazy guy. Every year it was a custom rule set that he would typically write for a custom battle. You know, it was a historical battle, but it was like it was a unique battle. And yeah, the fact that he would hire a professional diorama maker to create his battle boards for a wargaming thing, and he would be 1 year, and then next year he'd have a completely different setup in a completely different era. Like one day, didn't he do like the 1 year he did like the D-Day?
He did D-Day.
Storming the Bench.
He did D-Day on a 16-foot table.
16-foot table.
16-foot
D-Day.
table.
It was nuts. It was nuts.
I want to be there to do this thing. This sounds awesome.
It's Pacific Northwest Enfilade. It's I think
I've heard of Enfilade. It's been on my radar to go to. It's harder to justify cons where I can't sell RPGs.
Right, exactly.
Like that's kind of the hang up. So I guess I just need to make a historical miniature game.
But I will say this, Alan, you get the likes of Bill Webb going there and Chris from Chris Pramas, because no one recognizes them. So they go there just to play games, you know?
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah, it's just funny. If they were like RPG people, it'd be like, so you have the Frog God Games CEO guy over there. You have Green Ronin Publishing CEO over there. You have, what's his name, who's a big head honcho over at WotC over there. But they know that at a wargaming convention, nobody's going to know who the fuck they are, so it's fine. They can play wargaming. It's great. And they will be unaccosted by anybody.
Is Enfilade happening this year?
Yeah, it is, but normally they do
yeah.
May, and they're not doing May, they're doing September. So was that Labor Day?
Oh, Gen Con moved to September.
I know, right? Gen Con is
did
obviously
they?
going to win, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
But normally it's every May, so next year, May.
Yeah, I think it's Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm definitely not on their website looking on how to book a spot.
Well, and so the website's out of date, and I know that because the only person who has access right now is me, and I used to be the director of Enfilade, and I haven't been since COVID hit. So the website is definitely out of date, but contact me, man, and I will hook you up. It's actually worth it. It's got a very good, like, small family feel, but it's like 300 odd games going on. But it's intimate, so it has that great vibe to it. But at the same time, like, the quality of the games that are being brought to the table is ridiculous. Like, one year there was this like 8-foot dirigible that someone set up for a skirmish game. That honestly, some of the games are just like out there. They're top notch.
All right, I'm in. You've sold me. And
Nice.
plus, actually, there's no plus. I'm in. I don't even know the reason.
I did my Tudeberg game on that, and it was it was like an 18-foot table. There were 3,000 miniatures on it. It was the wrong scale for you because it was 28mm, and I love the 28s. But dude, looking at the volume of miniatures on there, it looked so good.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
I would
it's
totally
top
play
notch.
that. I would totally play that Tutenberg game, and I would be like, kill the Romans, just do it.
Well, and the funny thing was even though all of the players knew the rules ahead of time, it was like the Roman players were told, okay, so just so you know, any of the German units coming out of the forest, should you defeat that unit, it gets taken off the board. Just so you know, at the end of their next round, it's coming back on the board, because they pretty much haven't. That's part for this game. They have an unending supply of reinforcements, and there were some Roman players that were like, "We're gonna stand and fight," and it was like, okay, so you're admitting you're gonna throw this game? Because what are you doing, guys?
Yeah, and it's like, so I ran it 3 times, and Jack is right. I mean, the objective, Romans, get a third of your units off the board, 18 feet that way, go. That's the only objective that you have, right?
Do what they couldn't do in real life.
Like, just go, get off this freaking board. And the number of times that, like, a player, and there were 3 or 4 players for the Romans, and the number of times that a Roman player would go, I turn and I take the German advance, or I turn around backwards and I start fighting the Germans behind us. And I'm like, you can do that. It is not serving your objective, like, at all. And we actually had Bill Webb from Frog God come down, and I think it was Saturday morning or something, and like he was like, all right, we've been talking about this overnight. I think we've got a strategy. And I saw the Romans all get together and they were talking about it, and that was the game where the Romans were just like, go. Hold off the Germans, but go. Push forwards. And they got so freaking close to winning that game. It was so good.
Yeah, it's like a couple of generals were determined. They're like, okay, we're the ones that are going to have to sacrifice our units to hold them back while the rest of you just try to get the hell out of here.
And
No,
Beast,
I'm-
it took a while to set up, but then I left it up overnight. Obviously, there were, I want to say, 4 4-foot sections, so 8 feet wide of diorama table. It took a lot of time to get the trees and everything in there as well. Setup was probably, Jack, what, an hour and a half, but
Yeah,
multiple
the,
people.
the start of the first setup, yeah, the one we had to, yeah.
I actually I got like assistants. We had like 4 or 5 assistants helping not only GM but set up and helping like keep the game moving. So the setup wasn't too bad, but if it was one person, it was going to take forever.
Oh, that's nope.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But that's wargaming for you, though. I mean, obviously, you know, it just is. I love it.
Alan, what's one of the most enjoyable wargaming experiences you've had?
Oh, oof. That's so. My big game is Infinity.
Which
I
one?
play a lot of Infinity, and it's a science fiction skirmish game, kind of inspired by things like Ghost in the Shell or Appleseed.
Okay.
And it's got these gorgeous miniatures, and it's kind of like a heroic 28, 32 millimeter scale game. But it's this really detailed rule system where you can like hack things on the fly and all kinds of cool stuff. Big robots. And it was we had a whole board that was an MDF. Somebody had built in this MDF table that was the interior of a spaceship. So it was corridors and doors and open and close, and there were lights that worked on the board and everything. And I parked my sniper with his rifle on one long hallway, and he pinned an entire flank while the rest of my team ran to the objective. And he should have died. It was ridiculous, but he just locked it down against my buddy. And I had the best game of my life as I took him apart.
Nice.
Nice.
And, oh, it was so great. Other than that, I think it was, we played a game of Saga, Age of Vikings. Saga is my second favorite war game. I love Saga.
Oh, Saga looks so good. I've never played it.
It's mechanically brilliant. It's one of the best designed war games I've played. Every faction is the same, but what makes them different is every faction has a board with their abilities, and you roll special dice that tell you what abilities you can trigger for the turn. So my warrior is just like your warrior, but my battle board has different abilities than your battle board.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so mechanically, it's really easy to learn and teach. You just have to learn what your battle board does.
Right.
That's different.
Nice.
And we were playing, and we were doing this game, and I was playing my Anglo Danes. Speaking of Dane law, Anglo Danes, and my buddy was playing his Normans, and he came bringing his horses in, and I totally pulled a last-minute shield wall on him behind a fence and just murdered a bunch of knights. And it was so satisfying to watch those big Dane axes just come in from the side and kill knights. It felt so good.
Nice.
Watching his face just fall. Oh yeah.
Nice.
That's what it's about. Just that moment of crushing defeat in the other guy's face when you see that they know they've lost.
Right.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for that. That moment of just, oh crap, sadness. Like, yes, please. Give me that every game.
Nice.
But yeah, so I haven't had a good Napoleonic game. My friend and I have been talking about trying to do a full Waterloo setup at 6mm with regiments, like an actual scale Waterloo.
Yeah.
That would be the scale for it, man. That would be definitely the scale.
Yeah, and we've been talking about trying to pull it off, like 1-for-1 6mm Waterloo.
1-for-1. That would be epic.
Every guy on a 6mm stand equals one guy in the army.
Damn.
And we were pricing out what to do it. I don't think we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I looked at how much metal I'd have to buy, and I was like, well, I'd like to stay there.
That gives you a sense, though, the freaking scale of these things. That's one of the wonderful things that I love about military history, is when you actually start to think about the scale of what guys were looking at on the ground. It's nuts. It breaks my brain, you know?
Yeah. How do you coordinate an army like that, you know?
Right.
Like, that's the question. Like, what do you do?
Well, as history showed, sometimes you don't.
Right. Which is almost more interesting to me, right? I'm interested in generals who are talented, but I also just love the stories of people who like botch it.
100%. And I had a good friend of mine once, and he's an intelligent guy, and he was like, well, you just tell the guys to march forwards, or you tell them to swing left. I'm like, dude, just even try that with 100 guys in a line, and watch how ragged that shit's gonna get real fast. And then try that marching over terrain, you know. And now do that with 1,000 guys. It's going to be all over the freaking place. Forget it. And then when you start scaling it up and it's like issuing orders and stuff, yeah, forget it. It's
Yeah, it's so crazy. And like, what if the messenger takes an arrow on his right to the flank? You know, like there's so much that can go wrong.
I love rule systems that actually try to capture that chaos and like lack of surety on the battlefield. I love that type of thing. A little bit like you talking about having, you know, the generals in another room just looking at a big map. It's like you're not quite sure what's happening.
I feel like I'm gonna need to write a historical war game that emulates that now.
Totally right.
Like, what do you do? And like, what if somebody turns traitor? What if, you know, like, it's so interesting.
Yeah,
the Revolutions podcast, when they're doing the American Civil War, they kind of go into that and they talk about how George Washington was a terrible general.
Oh, indeed.
Like, the man could not win a military engagement to save his life, but he knew how to do two things really well. He knew how to play politics, and he knew how to retreat without losing guys.
There you go.
Like, he was the master of the flawless retreat. It's actually really impressive how well he retreats, and not sarcastically. Like, he could pull an army out of hell
and
not lose a man.
Wow.
Like, and so that kept the army afloat. Like, they'd start losing the battle and they'd bail and people would live. And so they keep coming back. But, you know, so it's just really interesting, like, the things that change the course of these conflicts.
Wow.
And the mass battle system I wrote for Salt Wolves of the Whale Road is going to bring it full circle. Boom. Look at that.
Back at it.
I try to emulate that with commanders having like this variable amount of army points they spend every turn, and these things, they kind of go in flux as you do things on the battlefields.
Alyssa, when you did your Napoleonic Quatre Bras game, what was the scale for that? Like, what was the unit per man ratio?
Oh no! Oh God! Yeah. Yeah, I was doing 28, so my scale is kind of like the point where Alan is probably gonna start to, like, you know, leave, because I've got like a battalion represented with just, I think it was 24 to 32 miniatures.
Okay.
But it was a big battle, and it looked freaking glorious. But yeah, that's the type of thing that would be better off in 15 or 10 millimeter for sure. And am I going to put Charybdis on the map? Alex, yeah, potentially. We've got a lot of area, a lot of sea to cover with monsters, so I'm sure.
Good night, Princess.
All right, Princess, see you.
But yeah, I love wargaming so much.
I haven't managed to wargame in, I want to say, a year and a half.
Well, most of us haven't managed to do much in the last year and a half, so I don't think you're alone. I got my shot, so I've been able to get out there and get some gaming in recently, which is
nice.
Back and do it, but I got my friend to buy a full English army for Jacobite Wars. So he's gonna have to face down my Jacobites in 6 millimeter.
Nice.
I'm gonna lose so bad. It's gonna be so great. So when you put all these mountains and trees and such on the map, do you look like at a topographical reference to kind of make sure they're kind of roughly in the right spot?
Yep, that's what we did. And I actually brought up I don't think I have it still in here, but I actually brought up, I looked up mountains of Europe. I did the same for the rivers too. So yeah, I get a reference and I draw according to that reference, and then I kind of loosened it a little bit because we are talking about 1000 AD, you know.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that in the right areas I had at least a representation of, like, let's call them elevations. I'm not sure what to do with Greenland, because I think Greenland is pretty flat for the most part. But I do want to put something there, which is why I haven't got it represented right now.
Yeah. That's hard. Well, I'll think about that. I'll send you some notes, maybe.
There you go. There you go. I mean, you know, it may end up being that we just draw a big, huge freaking monster in the center of it or something like that. But, or even putting the cartouche right there. But yeah, I definitely looked at Europe in general for, like, elevations and rivers, and I worked off that. And I figured as long as I get this close, it will be close enough for the time period.
That's the best way to do it.
Now, I want to be cognizant of your time, and typically around the hour and a half in is about when I would be winding down the particular stream. Alan, it has been an absolute joy to have you on. You're a kind of cool guy, and I think that's because you're a big, huge wargamer and you're a historian, and I kind of want to have you back on because of that.
Well, I appreciate that. It was a blast being here, and I am always happy to come back on.
Don't forget, huge film nerd too. Super awesome.
Huge film nerd as well. A huge film nerd.
You're hitting all the right buttons, man.
Well, I appreciate that. It's funny. People, you have that imposter syndrome. You're like, I'm not really that interested. And then people are like, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever.
Before we leave, wargaming story then from Alex Fixon that might resonate with you, Alan. Favorite wargaming moments of mine: Necromunda, one of her Escher Ganger pinning down 3 Spryers. I actually don't know what these are, with her auto pistol for 12 rounds before her heavy could get into positions of support.
So, first, I'm impressed that the game of Necromunda went 12 rounds. Impressive. 2, screw the Spryers. Great job. Go House Escher.
I have to look up what Necromunda, what all these things are now. What is happening?
That is not what I was expecting as
That's
a
fantastic.
response.
That's fantastic.
It's one of the 15 war games I play.
Nice. That's awesome.
Thanks for having me on. It was a genuine pleasure, and I am in love with this map. I can't wait to put a big canvas print on my wall right above my work desk right here.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. I have had a huge amount of fun working on it. If we could get something going with Noble Dwarf, their prints on canvas make colors look so rich, and I want one of these. You know what I'm saying? I think it's just gonna look. It's gonna look epic, man. We'll get the labels and everything dropped on here shortly. We're pretty close at this point. I think this is going to be a good looking map. The labels are going to be an interesting challenge. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, I look forward to seeing how you tackle it. But I've got Noble Dwarf's email, and I'm going to reach out to him and see what we can do once we get it closer to done about that.
Yeah. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's been a lot of fun. Really do thank you for allowing me to be part of this. And for everyone in the chat, please give a shout out to Alan Barr of Gallant Knight Games. Please go check out their products. They've got a lot going on out there. Alan's doing this full time right now. And they're top notch. They're top notch products. So with that said, I am back tomorrow night continuing to work on the Monsters of Salt Wolves of the Whale Road. Which sounds like a great game. Really does. I want to get a copy of it for myself. Everyone, good night. I love you. I'll see you on the flip side. Come back tomorrow. We're going to continue working on all of these lovely monsters. Until then.